I remember when I was just 13 years old and I went to my martial arts instructor and I said, "Teacher, how long is it going to take for me to become just like Bruce Lee?" 10 years. I said, "Well, what if I work twice as hard as everybody else in the school?" I thought about it for a moment. 20 years. I said, "Well, what if I work 3 times as hard as every other person in the school?" He thought about it for a minute. 30 years. I said, "Teacher, I don't understand. Why is it the harder I tell you I'm going to work, the longer you tell me it's going to take?" And he said, "If you have both eyes on the mountain, you have neither eyes on the path in which to get there." Mr. Toastmaster, or Mr. Master of Ceremonies, fellow Toastmasters and guests, I remember being 13 and being completely befuddled by what he meant. But what I think my martial arts teacher was trying to tell me is hard work has its place. Being committed to a discipline has its place. But ultimately, you have to be smart about it. You have to think about a goal. And you have to think about the path that you're going to get there. Because if you don't have that, you're just wasting your energy. You can work twice as hard. You can work 3 times as hard as everybody else in the school. But if you don't have the path laid out and the appropriate goal, it'll take you 3 times as long to get where you want to be. How many of you know what accredited speaker is? Tell me, what does it mean to be an accredited speaker? What does that mean anyway? I've never heard of that. What is that? What does it mean to be accredited?
It's certified by an organization that says that you've done the criteria and followed all the steps to get their stamp of approval.
Good. In Toastmasters, do we have that? Yes, we do. Accredited Speaker is the highest award in Toastmasters. We are higher ranked than the world champions. It essentially means that Toastmasters International has certified you and said, "We will give you a letter of recommendation that says that you have met the qualifications of a professional presenter." That's pretty cool. And I have a letter from Dan Rex, which is, actually I never use it. It's all framed and on the wall. That pretty much says you're good enough to be able to give speeches all over the world as a professional speaker. That's all great. That's what being accredited is about. But it's more than that. Being an accredited speaker means being a mentor to people in Toastmasters clubs all over the world, which is something I've had an opportunity to be able to do. It's an opportunity for you to become a role model in Toastmasters. We heard a lot about that just in the last speech, right? About being a role model, about being somebody who says, this is what being a Toastmaster is about. It's encouraging people to find their own paths, to find their own mountains. But instead of being the person going there, you're the one that's acting as the guide. That's what being accredited truly is about. I'll never forget, right after I became accredited, I got sat down by the woman who was the head of Accredited Speaker. She said, "Patrick, I'm sure you're so excited today." And I said, "I am. I was so great. I got to stand in front of thousands of people. I got to pick up my award. I got to do lots of fun stuff." And she said, "I have something to tell you about being accredited. There's one philosophy that you now have to live by. You can never have a bad hair day from now on." And what she meant by that was being accredited means you always have to be prepared to give a speech at any time. You always have to be prepared to help others. There's no time where you can stand up and say, I'm not feeling it today. I'm just going to be lazy. I'm just going to do whatever I want. It holds a certain stature as we move up in life, whether it's professionally, whether it's within a school, whatever framework, or the military, the greater responsibilities, the more stripes they put on your shoulders. That means the greater stature that you have to have because you embody the organization more and more. That's what being accredited is really all about. So today I'm going to really talk to you about the 3 keys to becoming accredited. And really, if you decide never to pursue the accredited speaker track, if you decide never to do it, it's okay. Because these keys will help you if you decide you want to become a professional speaker. Because the keys that you will learn as being a part of being that program actually is applicable to anyone who is interested in professional oratory. So really the first is choosing a path, right? So really you need to choose your mountain, right? So whatever that mountain happens to be, If you say, I want to become accredited, and that's actually what I said outright, I said, what's the most difficult thing you can achieve in Toastmasters? And they said, becoming an accredited speaker, because there's fewer accredited speakers than there are world champions. And I said, I want to do that. Because in college, I won the national collegiate championships. In high school, I won a championship. And so I wanted something in the professional world that says, you've achieved the highest rank possible, and something that is going to challenge you as a speaker. So that's the first thing. You have to choose your path. We're going to talk about that a little bit. I'm going to kind of ask around and kind of figure out what your path would end up being. The second thing is you have to find a guide. So you have to find someone who will guide you on that path to really get to that mountain. And that's something I find a lot of people who apply for accredited speaker, they forget about that. And they don't realize that there are accredited speakers all over the world who that is their entire purpose, is to help you. And they're not allowed to charge you for it. They're there to help you. They'll guide you on their path. And I'll talk to you about the mentor that I had and the contributions that she made to me, both on a professional level as well as a personal level. And then finally, the final key to success, whether you want to become an accredited speaker or a professional speaker overall, is, you know what? You need to start walking. You need to start walking down the path. And that's something I find that people sometimes forget. They lay out this beautiful path, they have this great tour guide, and they're too afraid to start walking. And that's what you have to do. You have to make that first commitment. You have to take that first step forward. And I'll talk to you all about it. So accredited speaker is an opportunity. There are people from all over the world who are accredited. I am the youngest ever to become accredited in Toastmasters history. I achieved it when I was 27. When others achieved it when they're in their 30s, I'm currently the only one under the age of 40. So there's a lot of people out there from demographics all over the place. There are people from Canada. There are people from here. There are people from Asia who have all become accredited. And it's for them, it shows their commitment not only to the organization, but a commitment to themselves. So let's talk first about your path, choosing your path. When I decided to first become accredited, I said, okay, I have a speech in my mind that I think the judges will love. I think they're going to love this speech. And I started writing it down, and I worked it all out. I said, great, this is going to be a terrific speech. And then I went to my mentor, and I told her, I said, look at this wonderful speech I have. The judges are going to love it. And she said, I don't want to see it. Don't even show it to me. Not interested. And I said, why is that? Because you made a mistake already. I said, what mistake did I make? She said, you were trying to find a speech that you think the judges are going to like. That's not the way you do it. The way you do it is you choose a topic that you know, that you love, that you are passionate about, whether it is bullying or whether it is disaster preparedness or whatever it happens to be. That's what the speech should be on. Even if you are going out and giving professional presentations on a weekly basis, you're not going to want to talk about something that you don't care about. You want to talk about things that you're passionate about, because then that shows in your oratory. It shows how much you want to do it. You impart that in your body language and in your hand gestures and in the way that you address people. It makes a difference. And so for me, my love is disaster preparedness. I love doing it. I've spoken to industry groups. I've talked to amusement park groups, and I've talked to nursing home groups, and I've talked to schools, and I've gone to safety conferences, and I talk to even restaurants and bars about it, and I say, you know what, you have patrons in your bar who, you know what, there could be an earthquake when half of them are drunk. You have to have a disaster plan for how to get those people out of your bar, how to find an evacuation location, how to make sure people aren't wandering off. As a bar owner, that's your responsibility. So let's talk about how to do that today. We're going to talk about that for 45 minutes. And people find, and I find that when you show that passion, it changes things. It changes the entire dynamics of the room. So I'm going to go around the room, and I want you in one or two words what your passion is, what your true passion is. Don't give me the words that you want me to hear. I want you to tell me something that you have something of an expertise in, because there are certain things I would love to be an expert in that I'm not. But there are certain things that you have a passion for and you have an expertise in. Okay, so think about that for just a moment, because when you do, you'll find your speeches are so much better. And I don't know any of you really. I know Gita, but I don't know anyone else. So I really want you to tell me in one or two words what your passion is. Just give me a topic, like I said, disaster preparedness or baseball or football or whatever. something that you're passionate about, something you have a slight expertise. Okay? Let's start here.
Labeling of people.
Okay, Adam?
Empowering women.
Helping people change their lives.
Okay,
Transformation.
Motivating people.
okay.
Storytelling.
Storytelling, okay. Lieutenant?
Leadership.
Leadership. Victor?
Self-mastery. The only game in town.
Wow. Wow. And actually, if I heard everybody, you know what? I could see there was actually one thread that I could have strung across the entire room. And it's pretty much like self-empowerment, right? If you are turning to somebody else in the topics of your speeches and saying, I want to impart a knowledge to make you a better person. I'm imparting information to make you a stronger person. I'm imparting information to make you a more successful person. Now, that's what everyone talks about. That's that common thread. Now, in disaster preparedness, one of the things that I do with every single time I train a group of people, the first thing I tell them is we're going to run a quick drill here today. We're going to run a quick drill, and it's a school usually. So let's just say it was a school. Okay, and I've got a lot of teachers. I got a lot of teachers' aides. I got a lot of people, somebody from the PTA, and we say, okay, guys, in a disaster response, who's in charge? Who's in charge? What is the answer they always give me? Who's in charge? The principal. Okay, I say, okay, good. Let's run a disaster drill, just real quick right here. We've had an earthquake. The principal, the vice principal are both dead. Okay, now who's in charge? She's dead too. Right? You see what I mean? No, but you see what I'm saying? Is that what I tell them is that they keep giving me those answers, and I keep breaking the leadership structure down until I get to the point where it's like, well, we don't know who. We have no idea who. Right? Because if I knock down the leadership structure, all of a sudden I say, guess what? Guess who's in charge? Everybody. You have to collectively decide who is in charge. Because I've actually seen this where office managers before have actually said, I don't want to be in charge. That thick disaster plan book, I don't want anything to do with that. You know, so what we do is I tell people I want to empower you during a disaster response, that it doesn't matter who's on the hierarchy. That's irrelevant. It's about you. And each one of you in your individual topics are doing the same thing. So when you give a disaster response or whatever type of speech it is, you need to talk about the things you are passionate about. You talk about your stories. And when you do accredited speaker, and I see this with professional speakers all the time, they look at an audience and say, I think they want me to talk about this or that. And you find you're totally off. I once gave a presentation to the Louisiana Association of Private Investigators. And the presentation I talked to them about was, here's how to make money during an emergency. Because I thought they want to know how to make money, right? They clearly don't want to talk about disaster planning for their agencies because they probably think that's too basic for them. So I delivered the presentation, and at the end of it, I got feedback. And somebody stood up and said, I don't know why you talked about that. I really wanted to know about how to do disaster response by agency. I said, a room full of former police officers and FBI agents, I didn't figure you'd want that stuff. That's a mistake. That's a fundamental error. Instead of talking about what you're passionate about, and you can draw people in. When I bring people into disaster trainings, do you think they really want to be there? No. Yeah. But what I do is I engage them the way I'm engaging you. Stories and jokes, and we try to make it fun. I tell them disaster preparedness should be something you're associated with something really fun. So choosing that path is really important. Finding something good structure to the presentation is important. Determining good organization for the speech is important. But ultimately, determining what you want to say. What information do you want to communicate to me? That makes the biggest difference in the world. That makes the biggest difference in the world. So that's why I always tell people the first thing you need to find is the path. People say, oh, well, that's so obvious. Well, it's not always obvious. You need to think it through. As a professional presenter, you're branding yourself. We live in a world now where you can do that over social media, right? You brand yourself as the expert in leadership or the expert in transformational change. Okay, great. So you need to position yourself in that way so when you're getting up, people already say, aha, I know this guy's going to transform me today. This person's going to make me change the way I think about whatever. Every topic that you deliver, whether it's about bullying or anything else, goes under that heading of transformational change. So one of the things that I tell speakers is don't let the topic drive or change your brand. Let your brand drive the topic. You kind of can tell by now I'm kind of a theatrical guy, right? When I was in high school, what clubs do you think I was involved in?
Drama club.
Drama club. I was always in the musical. I was in West Side Story. When I do my disaster trainings, I walk up, it's like The Price is Right, and I'm always like, "You're up next. You come on up. You're in charge of the disaster now." And they're like, I don't know what to do next. And we say, "We're gonna take the disaster plan, I'm gonna walk you through it. And I'm gonna tell you, this is not a scary document. This is a document we're gonna learn how to use so you feel empowered by that document." That's the kind of thing that'll make a difference. So whatever topics you do, make sure your branding is driving that. When you do accredited speaker, they're not paying for a speech, but your branding should still drive that stuff. Good. So now that we have a terrific path, we really know where we're going to go. Now we need somebody to help us to get there. And Toastmasters, you are very lucky. You have Toastmasters from all over the world who are happy to help you. When I lived in China, I went to Toastmasters clubs because I wanted to practice my Chinese. And I would go to the clubs, and guess what? They did not want to talk Chinese. What did they want to talk? They wanted to talk in English. I would say, "No, not today, not today." But these people want to help you in that symbiotic way. Just like you folks have allowed me today to come in here and talk to you. And that's really fun for me. I get a lot of enjoyment out of that. I really do. And in the same way, I'm hoping that this ultimately helps you out as well. One of the things in becoming accredited, when I was having that coffee shop conversation with that lady back in 2012, was she said to me, "Well, now that you're accredited, you have to realize that you have to be a mentor for the people coming after you. If somebody wants to become accredited next and you have the availability, that's something that you need to perform. Because you are now like a totem for Toastmasters International. You are a totem for accredited speakers. So it kind of gives you a mentor. It gives you a whole pool of people who are willing to be your mentor. During my journey for accredited speaker, I had 4 mentors. I had a main mentor, and then I had 3 other accredited speakers that did something unique on their journey that I wanted to learn about. So, for example, there was a woman named Rochelle Rice. She used to be the president of the National Speakers Association in New York City. She was one of my mentors. And I watched her speech on YouTube, and I called her and I said, "You look like a really intense lady. You seem like you have a lot of fun up there, but you take it very, very seriously." And if you ever watch her speech, you'll talk about it. She talks about transforming your physical body, because she used to be a ballet dancer for the New York Ballet Company. She was a world-famous ballet dancer, all this other stuff. And now she talks about how physical changes in your life and doing the right things with your body ensure that you are in tune both spiritually, emotionally, all that other stuff. And her speech is very mechanical. She's a very mechanical speaker. So this is the way she does it. We're going to talk about this first. Then we do this and this and this. And then we talk about this. Now, is that a really good style? Sure. Can you tell? Would that be my style? That's not me at all. This is me on stage. Dancing around, going over here. We're talking about this and disasters and this and that. Now, but one of the things that she did was, I took her intensity and I asked her, "You have a really intense approach to speaking. How should I have that same approach? What did you do that made you a success in that respect?" And she said, "I did this or I did that." And actually, the one thing she told me is she said, "You know what I said to myself as soon as I started accredited speaker? I'm only doing this once. I'm not ever doing this again. So if I don't make it this time, I'm done." And that's what you should do too. Go for broke. And so she was one of the people who had approached a lot of different mentors, the same thing. My primary mentor was a lady from Newport Beach. I called her up and I said, "I want to become accredited. Can you help me?" And she said, "Absolutely." She spent an hour and a half with me every Saturday after I would go to Toastmasters clubs during the week, and I would ask her, "So what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I mean, I did this, I practiced that. What do you think?" And she and I were hammering away at it and trying to get to exactly the presentation that would fit what we're trying to do here. Because even though we have our path, we know how we want to do it structurally, accredited speakers are programmed like any other. We have to make sure everything fits. Okay. Toastmasters International does not have any official mentors, but Accredited speakers actually have an outside website that you can access along with email addresses and phone numbers that allow you to directly access people. Say, okay, these are the individuals who are open to being mentors. And they're all placed there. And if you're interested, you can also reach out to me and I will help you to find one. Because I reached out to every living accredited speaker. And I asked them, would you be willing to help me with this or that? And everybody said, yes, absolutely. So one of the things is finding a guide. In accredited speaker, it's almost impossible to become accredited without a mentor. It's almost impossible. The reason is because there are ballots you have to think about. There's a methodology for judging. There's a methodology for how to get through the program that these folks will help you through. How many of you are already professional speakers? Okay, all right, so few. If you already have a method and ways in which you do things, that's great. When you go into accredited, there are habits you may have to break. There's things you may not be able to say when you're up there. The subtleties are far beyond the scope of this speech, but nevertheless, it's just things you have to think about. One example I will give you is an accredited speaker. He became accredited in 1982. And I said to him, what's the one piece of advice you could give me? His name is Don. Don, so what could I learn? And he said, they'll love you twice as much if you speak half as long. That's what he said. And ended up, I gave the longest accredited speech in history of the program. Because I like to talk, because I enjoy it, right? And so, but every single person will help you to judge what should you wear. There are things you should wear, there are things you should not wear. There's an approach to doing it. There's something you should write in your intros. There's a way of doing it, and you want to live within those structures. For example, we see people all the time who are Heisman winners in college football, and do they flop in the NFL? Sometimes. Because in college, there is a way that they play, there is a way that the offenses are created, there's a way that the defenses operate, that in the NFL, it's very, very different. Not necessarily better or worse, but sometimes college players, they're just not prepared to live outside that box of the NCAA. That's what you have to think too. I've seen professional speakers who are awesome in the field, and they flop in accredited. They flop because they don't get it. You have to play by the rules. There are judges that have to judge you, and 4 out of the 5 have to give you thumbs up. If you don't, you aren't going to make it. You should be reviewing the ballot. You should know everything about that ballot from top to bottom. Every one of those things you should understand in order to make your journey a success. And having a guide will help you from spending 10, 20, 30 years trying to walk to that mountain. Because the harder you work, it's all good. But if you don't have a guide to help you get there, you're kind of wasting a lot of your energy. All right. So what's the very last key to success in being accredited? Start walking. Start walking. Start giving speeches. Give a speech here. I actually got appointed to a position by President Obama. It was a non-political position for 3 months at DDC. So I decided, I'm going for accredited speaker, so you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to drive. I'm going to drive from Santa Barbara to Washington, D.C. Guess what I did along the way?
Visited Toastmasters Club and gave speeches.
I didn't give speeches. I gave the speech. And I gave the speech over and over and over and over again. Now, could I give the full 35-minute? No. I gave 8 minutes at this club, and then I would do the middle section somewhere else. They all got preps. They understood this is the middle of the speech. And I got 5,875 different pieces of feedback from 80 clubs in 10 states. And I went to my clubs in Washington, D.C. I found 3 home clubs that I said, is it okay if between now and accredited speaker, I practice here all the time? And what they said was, if we have an opening, you get it. Every single time. They were that supportive. And I would go and do it over and over again. My favorite piece of feedback I ever got was from a club in Oklahoma. I was speaking and all this other stuff. And I got a note that said, one thing I think you should work on is your watch is jangling. Every time you shake your arms and stuff, I can hear your watch jangling. So during accredited speaker, watch was off. So I like to wear my watches loosely on my arm. It's an old EMT habit. So I took my watch off so that it never jangled. Those are things that I would have never noticed or even thought of. But somebody was able to help me to do that. When I gave a speech in the South, they said you speak too fast. When I would give a speech in New York, they said you're speaking too slow. So it's one of those things where every club will give you a different perspective. Does that mean you have to listen to every single one? No. But what it does means you need to keep it all into perspective and say, these are the pieces of feedback I'm going to use, and these are the pieces of feedback I'm going to think about, but maybe I'm not going to act directly on them. Once you go to all these clubs, once you've really gotten to everything, you should practice the speech all the way through from start to finish. And not in front of any club. You should do it in the mirror. The night before I gave the accredited speech in Orlando, I delivered it in front of a wide mirror. And I did the whole thing from start to finish. And I discovered little things that I had to change, a little annoying things, doing this action, things like that, little annoying movements that I'm so used to in theater and moving around with. When you're doing a speech on death and destruction, you can't quite do it. Regardless of how empowering it is, ultimately it's about disasters. So you have to talk in a way that is more solemn. Maybe you have to slow down your walk. Maybe you have to look at people a little longer. All those things, go to the room the day before. Look at the room and start walking around and talking at people. Who cares how dumb you look? In college, I used to give speeches up against the wall like this and say, this is how Kim Jong-un is going to handle North Korea. You know what I mean? Because you're giving speeches on all these things. Talking to yourself really helps. But regardless of how you do it, regardless of how you give a speech, regardless of what feedback you do or do not take, being accredited is more than just simply being a good speaker. It's more than just putting out the hard work. It's actually thinking it through. It's choosing the right goal for yourself, finding the right path for yourself, choosing the right mentor for yourself, and then actually starting to walk down the road. When you find that you do that, you will discover a wonderful group of people, not just accredited speakers, but speakers and Toastmasters from all over the world who will support you in your goals to make yourself better, to make yourself better, to make your speech better, and ultimately to help you to reach that mountain that you've always wanted to seek, and I am included in that. I am happy to help anyone in here. And what you'll discover over time is that once you have set those three things in motion, it won't necessarily be down to the hard work. It'll just be to start walking down the path. And before you know it, if you're able to put all those pieces together into one, you will suddenly and finally